This is our chapter's first semester here, and this is our first big event, so to see this many faces actually makes me really happy. Dog. I'm sure you all know who you're here to see today. And if you don't, it's Mikey Weinstein, and if you're in the wrong room, stay anyway, we have pizza. Earlier this week, we got an email, actually no, last week we got an email that I want to read you part of. On behalf of our classmates, we ask and beg you to publicly announce that you are withdrawing from the speech at UCCS, and that you and your wife Bonnie will not be attending our class of 1977 Academy reunion. We will give you until this Wednesday night to do this. This was last Wednesday. If you refuse to do it, then we will pray the Psalm 109. We will pray at home and at church. Our families will pray together. We will pray to the Lord to stop your poison. We will pray the psalm against you and your wife and all of those who give you sanctuary and protection in Colorado Springs. Let us be clear. None of us will harm you or your wife. That would be illegal and wrong. But it is not our place to mete out the justice and punishment you and your followers deserve and ever. We won't have to. The Lord will. It is our God-given right to pray for his intervention and protection from your evil. Even under the Constitution, you worship as an idol in place of the Son of God. Now, if you're not familiar with Psalm 109, this is the part that they're talking about. May his children be fatherless and his wife a widow. May his children be wandering beggars. May they be driven from their ruined homes. May a creditor seize all he has. May strangers plunder the fruits of his labor. May no one extend kindness to him or take pity on his fatherless children. May the iniquity of his fathers be remembered before the Lord. May the sin of his mother never be blotted out. May their sins always remain before the Lord, that he may cut off the memory of them from the earth. Not exactly the nicest thing, really. It has on numerous occasions been called trolling for assassins. So as you look around, you'll see uniformed officers here, because I will not have an assassination on my watch. Now I should tell you a little bit about how I met him. I first read his book, With God on Our Side, back in June of 2010. And I've been an atheist all my life. I've lived in Colorado Springs for a really long time. So I've always been a very quiet atheist, very kept to myself. Didn't really get out, do anything. I read his book, and it opened my eyes to what was going on at the Air Force Academy, right here in our own hometown. Now, it hurt me at a personal level because I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy when I got out of high school. I wanted to be one of those kids. So did my dog, apparently. And to find out that this was going on so close to home and right under our noses, it made me angry. And I consider reading that book a turning point in my atheism. I went from being the quiet atheist that, kept to themselves, and when Christians came up and talked to me, I just nodded and smiled and went on my way. After that, when Christians came up to talk to me, I was not the happiest person. They kind of received some of my anger. And it took me a little while to kind of calm down and realize that I could be an activist atheist without being an angry atheist. So this last August, I went up to the Ascent of Atheism convention, my first ever convention, and I got the opportunity to meet Mikey Weinstein and shake his hand. And it was kind of like getting the opportunity to meet your greatest idol and God all rolled up into one. I'm like, okay, there's now the person who, exactly, he's real. It's kind of like, you hear something on the internet all the time, and then you finally see the person, and you're like, oh my God, they're real. So I shook his hand that night, and I told him where we were from, and that we had just started this SSA chapter. And he said, well, I'm going to be in Colorado Springs at the end of October for my reunion. Why don't I come and talk to you guys? And I said, okay. That was 2 months ago. I don't think I've slept since then. You never quite realize how big organizing something like this could be until you actually do it. And so the fact that this man does this on a daily basis is just amazing to me. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, since I'm sure all of you know who he is, but really, sometimes it's just fun to say the good stuff. Mikey was an honors graduate from the Air Force Academy in 1977. He's been married for 35 years to his lovely wife, Bonnie, who is actually here tonight. You can all wait when she comes in. Say hi, Bonnie. There we go. 7 members of Mikey's family have attended the academy, so it is like a second home to him. And so when he found out that his son was being persecuted as a Jesus killer because he was a Jew, Mikey had enough. And it was through this persecution that caused him to put the pedal to the metal and start the MRFF. Now the MRFF itself is an internationally recognized humanitarian organization. Just this last week, they were nominated for their 5th Nobel Peace Prize. They've been nominated consecutively for the last 4 years. Mikey has also received, sorry, I don't have all this memorized yet, but he has been honored as Person of the Year by Americans United for the Separation of Church and State. It was their first ever award of this. He has been named one of 50 most influential Jews in America by The Forward, which is a nationally recognized Jewish publication. He has received a nomination for the JFK Profile and Courage Award and has received the Buzz Flash Wings of Justice Award. And today, he is here to talk to you lovely people. Mikey Weinstein.
Thank you very much, Heather, and thank you, UCCS and the Secular Student Alliance for this great opportunity. Thank you all for coming out on, I guess, what's going to be the warmest evening for the next few evenings here in Colorado Springs. It is great to be able to be here, and thank you very much. I also thank our security. I wasn't here for too much of the introduction, so I don't know whether you explained to them about the little ultimatum we had. And apparently, some of my classmates wanted me to publicly announced as of last Wednesday night that we weren't going to come to this or the reunion. Anyone who's under the age of 14, please raise your hand out there. Okay, our response was, fuck you. And my wife and I are here, Bonnie, all right? I know that our foundation, I love the SSAs, and they're springing up all over the country, and I appreciate all you guys coming here. I know that Andy Kaufman, as a comedian, used to provide milk and cookies. Our foundation tonight's praying for, we're praying for you guys, for your pizza and your Coke. That's how much we love you for coming out here. So I've waived the, there's no speaking fee because it's really an enjoyable thing for me to come into the heart of darkness in El Paso County and do this. When I come up here, I'm okay mostly in the southern part of the city, but when I cross Woodman, my hand goes up, fist starts to swing, and I got to sing all 3 verses of We Shall Overcome, right? So, a little bit about the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. My wife and I started it technically December 5th, I think it was 2005. That was after we determined that the Air Force Academy was pissing in our faces and telling us it was raining with regard to what was happening at the Academy. I really owe all of this to Mel Gibson. When he came out with his movie, some of you may remember in February of 2004, I always forget the name, I think it was the Jesus Chainsaw Massacre or Freddy versus Jesus. At the time I was stunned at the ferocity with which the cadet wing was forcing its will upon cadets and the staff to go see this movie, like all together, let's go see it and how cool it'll be. And at the time I had my 2 Jewish sons, my future Christian daughter-in-law that were at the academy, and I was sure that somebody had just made a little mistake here. And the academy for me was a transcendent place. During my 4 years there, I never enjoyed a single day. but it meant a lot to me. I'm amazed that I somehow managed to graduate. I know we have cadets here tonight. I know we have clients here tonight. I also know we have detractors here. I know I speak all over the country, and I guarantee you within 90 minutes when we finish tonight, they'll probably even eat my pizza. It's your pizza. They'll be blogging in the blogosphere about how evil and terrible and, black-hearted I am, and all this connection with Satan. I wish it would, when I go into McDonald's to order a number 2 or something, they still ask for $6.10, despite the fact that I tell them that, Jerry Falwell called me the field general of the godless armies of Satan. I get no respect. I still have to pay the same thing you guys have to pay. We currently represent, as of an hour ago, 30,027 United States Marines, sailors, soldiers, airmen, cadets and midshipmen, and my alma mater, of course, the Air Force Academy, West Point, where I spoke last week, Annapolis, Merchant Marine Academy, Coast Guard Academy, National Guard, Reserve, Reservists, Coast Guard, and veterans. 96% of our clients are practicing Christians, being told that they're not Christian enough. 3/4 of the 96% are, roughly 3/4, are Protestants of pretty much every denomination. We have 21 different denominations of Baptists alone that are our clients. The remaining 4% are secularists, humanists, Native American spiritualists, Jewish personnel, Buddhist. We represent 11.3% of every Muslim American in the U.S. military. And our enemy is always the same entity. And our enemy is something that's referred to as dominion or fundamentalist Christianity. Ironically, our largest growth area in the foundation is evangelical Christians. They're on our advisory board. They donate to us. They are our clients. We have 372 clients at the Air Force Academy right now. One is out. He may be here tonight. He is a conservative evangelical Christian. The difference is, let me describe who it is that we're fighting, and I mean really fighting. I mean tooth and nail fighting, to the death fighting. I'm going to draw in the air here a circle. If I got close to failing mechanical engineering the 10 times I took it at the Air Force Academy. So I know that there's a torque moment in there somewhere. But you draw a circle, and that's Christendom. You draw a line down the middle, since I'm from Albuquerque, we'll call that the main Rio Grande. To the left of this circle, you have mainline Protestants and mainline Catholics. They follow as their mantra in Christianity something known as the Great Commandment, which is something Jesus allegedly talked about in the book of Matthew, is the best description in the Sermon on the Mount, which is basically just 2 things. It's very chill. Love the Lord your God with all your mind, soul, and heart. And there, he kind of channeled ahead of time Rodney King. Can't we all get along? Treat others the way you want to be treated, says Jesus. Which, of course, occurred before Jesus in something called the Pentateuch, or the 5 books of Moses, or the Torah. And before that, in something called the Code of Hammurabi. And probably before that, we had the Neanderthals that had their version of this. So it wasn't anything particular, but it's called the Great Commandment. And love the guy with the white beard who's up there, and everybody get along. It's very chill. Cross the Rio Grande to this side of the circle. And, my first book was called With God on Our Side, One Man's War Against an Evangelical Coup in America's Military. I wish I could have changed the name. Because on this side, you don't have mainline Protestants or Roman Catholics. You've got evangelicals and fundamentalists. Initially, I thought they were all the enemy, but I was wrong. I was wrong. Something you won't often hear a fundamentalist Christian say. Because there's a baby Rio Grande that bisects this other half. Hello, cadets. How's it going? Does bitches still suck?
Yes!
Excellent.
Wild Bills.
Very good, very good. The baby Rio Grande bisects this half. Over here we've got mainline fundamentalists, and over here we have, on the far side of this bisection, we've got fundamentalists. On this side, we have evangelicals. They don't follow the Great Commandment. Their prime directive is something called the Great Commission. You can look it up in Mark 16:15, Matthew 28:19. I'm sure you're Googling as I speak. The Great Commission is one of the last things Jesus is supposed to have said to his followers, which is, go and make disciples of all nations. Your commission, get out there and get them to believe. So both evangelicals and fundamentalists follow that. So I actually thought they were the troublemakers. They were the real assholes, I thought. But I was wrong. Because you see, evangelicals and fundamentalists, every fundamentalist is an evangelical, but not vice versa. Not vice versa. They both want to turn everybody into this room, those of us that don't already adhere to their perspective, into Christians like them. But evangelicals say, look, I have to, oh, I see we do have somebody under the age of 14, I apologize. I have to comport my zeal to turn you into a Christian like me in accordance with the time, place, and manner restrictions put forth by our U.S. Constitution and its construing federal and state case law. Fundamentalists basically do like this. There is no time, there is no place, and there is no manner in which you can stop me from bringing that great old weaponized gospel of Jesus Christ to you. I can scream Jesus in a crowded theater. That's the problem. That's Mikey's definition. It's much more intense. I can get into predispensationalism, premillennial dispensationalism. We can go through all of this stuff with Mr. Rushdoony. There's a gigantic science there, but that's how we cut it down. By the way, I've also enraged the fundamentalist Christians by eliminating the Judeo-Christian 10 Commandments, since there's about 8 million versions of those. I have Mikey's 5 Commandments. Love each other, help each other, never be a perpetrator, never be a victim, and the last one that's the most important is never be a bystander. Don't be a bystander. Anybody out there have a dog or a cat or love animals? Raise your right hand, please. Right hand. Okay. If you love animals, you know that animals have rights. And if you care about animal rights, there's a spectrum. On the left here, we've got the courteous, button-down jacket, ties, shiny shoes, very sweet and wonderful. And they are. They're wonderful. The Humane Society. Follow the spectrum over here. You've got PETA. We're PETA when it comes to protecting the separation of church and state in the technologically most lethal organization ever created by humankind. One of my heroes is Martin Luther King Jr. His mantra, of course, right, was, "We shall overcome." You have to question whether he would have been effective without one of my other heroes, Malcolm X, who said, "No, we shall come over." I am not in the business of leading a foundation that is building bridges. We don't do that. We bust noses. We break faces, because when you are being told that you lack intelligence, character, honor, honorability, courage, and trustworthiness because of your religious faith, your chosen religious faith, or lack thereof, there is no difference between that and telling someone that they're stupid because of the color of their skin or because they were born a woman. When you are feeling this type of prejudice, it is not a problem, issue, or challenge. It's a national security threat. You are being literally raped. We call our clients victims of spiritual rape. I saw today that the senator in Indiana, Richard Murdoch, I guess it would actually be Dick Doc. I was going to put another word in there for a second. Is now saying that if a woman is raped and she gets pregnant, you know, this was all part of God's plan. I mean, he is literally, he's Todd Aiken on steroids. I mean, Aiken's concept was that, a woman's body can tell the difference between love and hate sperm, right? She's pregnant, the body said, it may have been a rough ride, but it really was all love. The problem is that when that same mentality is your military superior, and even if you're being gently evangelized, get the hell out of my face, sir or ma'am, is not an option for you. Questions later. Just bear with me. No, this is my show, okay? You can have your show and we'll get to your question. It is not an option for you if you're even being gently evangelized. What does that mean? A commander has, someone who's superior to you has a Bible on their desk in an official work capacity. That's a problem to us. I don't care whether you don't like me or not. I mean, friendship, you talk about, my wife and I have had family and friends for decades. Everybody does if you're old enough. And many of them have run away during this fight. And we've created in the last number of years a lot of new friends. I think we're going to hopefully make some tonight. My definition of friendship is it's completely detached from time, and that friendship is not about whom you've known the longest. It's about who showed up and never left your side. And we do not leave our client's side. What do we provide anyone who comes to us? We provide them AARP, not the one you're thinking about. Anonymity, action, results, and protection. 11 of our clients have been killed in action in Iraq and Afghanistan. And my dear friend Glenn Doherty, on my advisory board, was killed in the attack on Benghazi when the Navy SEALs killed on September 11th. Dick Lamb is on my advisory board. I already held some sort of office in the state. Bob Harry is the former commander of Space Command, the first vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Ambassador Joe Wilson, the outed CIA agent. Valerie Plame's husband's on my board. We have generals, we've had admirals, we just had the first African-American woman ever elected to the U.S. Senate, just joined our advisory board 2 weeks ago, Carol Mosley Vaughn. Our largest funders are the Rockefeller Family Foundation. So we're not exactly the radical left. I know that the people down the street there, my friends that focus on the fascists, would love to be viewed as that we are somehow, my wife and I, our foundation, which has 100 people in it, that we're Northern California, tree-hugging, bleeding heart liberal Democrats. Not that there's anything wrong with that. We're not. I'm a registered Republican. I'm just one that's voted for Clinton twice, Gore, Terry, Obama. But I'm starting to like Romney. Just kidding, maybe not. We can't talk about who we endorse and do for candidates, and nobody's been more outspoken in slamming Obama since he became commander-in-chief than I have been. But I'm going to tell you again, it's not like this is a small issue. You will not see church-state come up in any of the debates. Now, why is that? It's too close. It's too close. Everybody's against a woman being raped, unless apparently it's God when it's God's plan. And some people are running for the U.S. Senate. Everybody's against child abuse, what happened at Penn State. But when you start telling somebody that, I don't agree that your version of this particular theology is the way we should run things, you're starting to get into dangerous territory. Many of you out there are secularists, humanists, atheists, agnostics, because you're associated with SSA. I am what I call a jagnostic, a Jewish agnostic. I love the bagels and lox, and I really don't want to ever pay retail. So this is, for me, my culture is important to me, and that's where we stand. The press and our enemies seem to be absolutely enthralled with me and my family and others associated with me as to what our views are. I get attacked for my love of death metal. I'm a Slayer fan, Anthrax, Pantera. I love to go into the mosh pits. I do. My wife doesn't like when that happens. I usually get hurt. But it isn't about my personal views. It's about who has a fundamental right to believe the way you want to believe. And when I tell secularists out there, and humanists and atheists, agnostics, I have three things I basically tell you. Please try to take this to heart. Number one, be respectful of people of faith. Do not treat them the way that many of them treat you. Their faith is important to them, and it deserves respect. I still pray 3 times a day in Hebrew. Why? Just in case. And so be respectful, seriously. Number two, understand why you scare the shit out of them. I want to make sure you understand, because I don't think you do. If you are right, my friends who are secularists, atheists, agnostics, if you're right, deep down into the soul of a person of faith, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, whatever, we have 12 members of the Jedi faith, literally, among our 30,000. I don't ask, really, you can Google it, go ahead, it's an actual faith. Very Baha'i-like, but if you tell people that what you believe, deep down, they're left with the following, that basically, all we are sacks of meat sitting on a rock in the middle of outer space. The only thing we know for sure is we're going to die, we're helpless to stop it, and when we're dead, I'm not done. When you're dead, you don't know that you're dead, and you don't know that you were ever alive. Steve Jobs doesn't know that he was Steve Jobs and started Apple, because he's dead. And it scares people. Understand that. Understand and respect their faith, whether it's a girlfriend, boyfriend, mother, father, teacher, whatever. Don't treat them the way that they may have treated you. Thirdly, stand up. March 13th, 1964, something happened that shocked America. I was in 3rd grade, which was a tough year because November 22nd of the year before, in 3rd grade, John Kennedy was killed when I was in 3rd grade. My teacher, Mrs. Nation, one of the greatest teachers I ever had, who actually turned out to be an evangelical Christian, I didn't know it at the time, stopped class 2 weeks later with the news of what happened in Queens on March 13th, 1964. She stopped class and we talked about it as 3rd graders. There was a 28-year-old female New Yorker by the name of Kitty Genovese. I see the heads going up and down now. Kitty was coming home from being a bar manager. It was near dusk. She was attacked by a guy who beat her up and then ran away. And when no one did anything, he came back and then he raped her. He ran away. No one did anything. Kitty started to crawl to her vestibule, which was 100 yards away, her apartment. He then came back and he killed her. Why did that shock America? It took place in New York, and there's murders everywhere. Because 38 New Yorkers saw that and did nothing. There was no 911 system at the time, but they could have called the NYPD. It shocked America and the world, and it gave rise to the so-called Genevieve syndrome or bystander syndrome. When she told me this, I remember at the time I remember the year before I was a second grader watching a third grader getting beaten up by two fourth graders. And at that age, you're very stratified. I mean, I was watching a kid a year older than me get the crap kicked out of him by kids 2 years older than me. But I felt guilty about it, and something clicked in me that I would never let that happen again. My latest book is out. I'm doing a book signing after this called No Snowflake in an Avalanche. That comes from the great Voltaire quote. He had so many. No snowflake in an avalanche ever feels responsible. Don't be a snowflake. We are not born with soundtracks. When you go to the movies, and we all do, you hear the trumpets, you hear the chorus, the drums beat, whatever, and it moves us because we are an amalgamation as human beings, as Homo sapiens. And music touches us, and we know when something important is going to happen. Well, not in real life. You're born with your soundtrack, and your soundtrack is here and here. And you need to listen to it. Have you ever had something happen in your life, and then about an hour later you realize, hey, this was significant. I need to do something about this. When I found out that my youngest son was being called a fucking Jew, quote unquote, and being accused of total complicity in the execution of Jesus Christ by numerous cadets all over the Air Force Academy and even professors, you know, it wasn't hard for me to listen to my soundtrack after I downed about a fifth of Crown Royal. For 9 months, I tried to work with the Academy. Why? Because I love it. The number of times my family's had to stop me from putting this, holding a press conference, which I could do in 2 seconds, getting a sledgehammer and beating the hell out of this, they've lost count of. But this is important to me. Sometimes it's like a battered wife situation or a battered spouse situation, what's happened to my academy. But it's not just the Air Force Academy. We have 1,000 U.S. military installations scattered around the globe as we garrison this planet in 150 countries and ships at sea. And what are we fighting? It's enormous. How many people remember the famous theme of President Eisenhower's farewell speech? Anybody? Right there. I love your hairdo. Yes, President Eisenhower warned about the so-called military-industrial complex. Well, here at the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, I'm telling you now with the gunsmoke in my face tonight, we fight a fundamentalist Christian, parachurch, military, corporate, proselytizing complex. It is enormous. It is inextricably intertwined into the very DNA of the Pentecostal God, which only has 2 weaknesses. Like Superman, what are Superman's 2 weaknesses? One is kryptonite, what's the other? Geeks out there? Magic, come on. Kryptonite and magic, Superman's only weaknesses. The Pentagon, or Pentecostal God's only weaknesses are being dragged into the federal state court or being exposed in the electronic and print media. We do that all alone. We do it tremendously. They're not used to that, but that's what we do. And that's what we do with a level of ferocity and aggression that we take a great deal of pride in. When I spoke at my alma mater the last time, it probably was the last time, I think it was February of 2010. I think it's called the NCLS, the National Christian Lecture Series. You kids probably know what that stands for. I might have had one of those things wrong. The Gazette ran a headline, I think it was the day before, I kid you not. It said, Academy's own Godzilla invited to speak to cadets. I love El Paso County. I'm not kidding, they really did that. I speak all over the country, but it's a situation that I can sum up in one sentence for you tonight on a Wednesday night. We're dealing with a fanatical religiosity, and I don't mean Salafist or Wahhabi, mostly Sunni-dominated Islam, but again, fundamentalist Dominion Christianity, mixed in with actual weapons of mass destruction, because we have them, the other side doesn't yet, mixed in with a bitter, poisonous, disgusting version of so-called patriotism, further mixed in with totally unfettered access due to the draconian specter of military command influence and the very vertically encrusted nature of our military, further mixed in with a total dearth of any restraint, oversight, and supervision. What we have is a bubbling national, metastasizing security threat internally to this country, every bit as much as what we're facing externally by a still resurgent Taliban and Al-Qaeda and the Mujahideen, the insurrectionists and the jihadists. It's as simple as that. So what do we do about it? We have to fight. We can't just crawl up in a fetal position and walk away. And we have to be very aggressive. I am probably the least perfect person in this room, but I'm very comfortable with myself. Probably my wife and children aren't that comfortable, but I'm really good with me. And this isn't about attacking the messenger, which happens a lot. It's about the message. Besides death metal, I also love Bruce Springsteen, who's the one who said, trust, the message, not the messenger. I didn't ask for this. I think there's a saying that we often find our destiny on the road that we took to avoid it. I was as stunned as anybody when I found out 4 years ago, when I was speaking also at the Air Force Academy, that there were a group of cadets that believed they were led there to fight me and my family. Now, tonight, it's possible that Spartacus is among us. For the last 4 years, there's been a different Spartacus at the Air Force Academy. That's the code name given to the cadet who leads a little bit in excess of 100 cadets that pretend to be fundamentalist Christians to be left the F alone. They leave out books, DVDs, and CDs in the room in accordance with whatever the site picture says about how the cadet room is supposed to look, and we codename that person Spartacus. They want to be left alone. They know they're living a lie. They know there's an honor code, but that's how they have to do it. Is Spartacus here tonight? Don't stand. We should all be Spartacus. We have a different name at Annapolis for Spartacus and also at West Point. Most of our clients are E1 to E4, O1 to O4. We have some people here tonight that we've actually honored. Our highest honor is the Thomas Jefferson Award that we give out. We've given it out to academicians, members of Congress, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists, excellent attorneys, and on and on. Actors, Mike Farrell from MASH, Ed Asner, very close friends. Yes, I know they're liberal, but this is not a political spectrum left or right issue. It's a constitutional right and wrong issue. Most of our donors are not Democrats and liberals. They are very conservative Republicans who are afraid for anyone to know that they're donating to us. When I started this fight, I was a multimillionaire. And now, and I mean this, there's nobody in this room that has a lower net worth than I do, and I'm really happy, which means I will definitely be kicked out of the International Jewish Conspiracy tonight. No question about it. Because I've determined there's something actually worthwhile going bankrupt over. And that means fighting this. Because I cannot stand by and watch another third grader get beaten up. And I remember what Mrs. Nation, who I know to her dying day was sure I was going to burn eternally in the fires of hell. I know what she meant about never letting Kitty Genovese be brutally beaten, raped, and killed again. I'm often asked, Mikey, what is it that you're really about? I mean, what is it essentially that you want? And I remind people about Dr. Benjamin Franklin, who was the rock star of his day at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. When he walked out, he was surrounded by his fans. Dr. Franklin, what kind of government have you all bequeathed to us? His response was, a republic, if you can keep it. Ladies and gentlemen of El Paso County, I beg you to please help me keep the republic, and thank you for the honor of speaking with you tonight. Would the enemies like to ask any questions first? Please stand up, because you never do. Okay, any of my new friends? Yes, blue shirt man.
About 25 years ago, an Indiana legislature was asked to comment on bilingual education. He said if English was good enough for Jesus Christ, it ought to be good enough for everybody.
And we all know that Jesus spoke fabulous English. Did you hear the question was said? No. All right, but he said, well, you know what? I'll tell you later. Next question. Because that really was a statement, not a question. Does anyone else have a question? Because I'll answer any question, sexual, religious, political, music, sports. Yes, sir.
Well, what did you do for a career right before you got into this?
I was into crystal meth distribution. It was seriously a lot safer than this stuff. I mean, civil rights fighting, they didn't exactly, at the Air Force Academy, it wasn't a major then. I think it is now. it's a very lonely, dangerous, and expensive proposition. And I'm a lawyer. I was the first lawyer ever in my class at the academy. I was a lawyer for, was a JAG in the Air Force, total of 10 years, including law school and law clerking. I was a federal prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, did a lot of divorce. I was in the West Wing of the Reagan White House for a little over 3 years as one of Ronald Reagan's attorneys. I managed something called the Iran-Contra investigation, then it was time to leave. Went to Wall Street, went to law firms at Wall Street in Washington, D.C., and then I became Ross Perot's general counsel. My dad is a distinguished graduate from Annapolis. He and Perot were best friends in the class of '53 there. Unfortunately, my parents, I guess, let him change my diapers once when I was an infant, and he never let me forget that, including in board meetings. But then I went on into the private sector, did stuff, created some companies, and I guess Bonnie and I were having a pretty good life until that damn Mel Gibson movie. You know, I liked Apocalypto, but that other one just it kind of sucked. Next question. Yes, sir.
Could you describe some of the MRFF's biggest victories?
I'm happy to do that. We've on our website, and if you want to go there, just buckle up and make sure you're well locked in. You can see the text, the video, and the audio. Some of you may remember that our first big story that went viral was we were approached by 136 U.S. Marines and soldiers in late 2009. We had a bunch of victories before that. Most of our victories have to occur behind the scenes because nobody wants anyone to know that they're even complaining or coming to us for help. They don't even want their families to know. We were approached because the rifles that were being used by our combat soldiers on the base of the Trigicons in Michigan, think Chick-fil-A, but they're a huge defense contractor. They had embedded in the base of the scopes biblical citations, I kid you not, to Matthew, Mark, John, and of course Revelations. And this was causing a few problems in Helmand Province, Kandahar, and other places. We couldn't believe it. It's not uncommon for us to polygraph our clients because the stuff, we literally can't make it up. We talk about it in our books. We looked at this, it was real, we broke the story, it went viral. I think it was 48 hours later, Petraeus who was a problem for us also, was forced to say, we had no idea, this is terrible. The first group that came out to support us was the Church of England. The New Zealand and Australian armed forces found out that they had the same gun sights. The Israeli Defense Forces found out that they had the same ones. All of our NATO allies. Trigicon immediately stood firm saying they weren't going to change, but they had this little $1.8 billion contract. And it didn't take long. We made a demand, and they said, okay, we won't do any more like this. And the Defense Logistics Agency followed suit, and Trigicon put forth, I think it was 100 fix-it kits. Now, a fix-it kit can be going to Lowe's or Home Depot and getting a little black piece of tape and sticking it on over the scope, or as our young kids were doing, taking a penny or a dime and scratching it. But then they were being threatened with court-martials for defacing government property. We just broke the story about 3 weeks ago is that they've never fixed these rifles. It's a complete and utter joke. They have not been fixed because they don't want to fix. Shortly after graduating from the academy and getting through pilot training, one of my classmates crash landed his aircraft. He survived, but he was sitting in a pool of JP4 fuel, like a bathtub in the cockpit. He knew he needed to get out of there fast, so he got out and ran away. Simple story. If this had been Hollywood, of course, the plane would have exploded. He would have dove from a fireball. It did explode, but 20 minutes after he got safely away. Why am I telling you this? Because he ran away on 2 compound fractures. The bones were sticking out of his right leg and his left leg. And I asked him, how did you do that? He said, I was highly motivated. So when you're motivated to do something, you'll do it. Another one of our big victories, I can't even make this stuff up. We had 68 United States Air Force nuclear missile launch officers that came to us in July of last year. They were tired of being indoctrinated into the fact that Jesus wanted them to launch their nukes. 62 of them were practicing Roman Catholics and Protestants. We were very careful to point this out so that we can make sure we're okay. Literally, no pun intended. God help us if they're atheists, secularists, or humanists. They've got to make sure they have a perspective of one of the 3 Abrahamic faiths, or perhaps the Jedi faith at least. And this was called the Jesus Loves Nukes speech. We couldn't believe it. We got a hold of it through one of our clients and something called the Freedom of Information Act, the PowerPoint presentation. You can go home, watch it on our website tonight, and there we saw it. A gigantic slide of Revelation 19:11, Jesus is the mighty warrior, quotations from the book of Timothy and Hebrews. We released the story right before the anniversaries of the bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and because why? The PowerPoint presentation included thousands of faces of those that were incinerated in those Japanese cities, which is something you do not do in Japan. You don't show the faces of the dead. Wrapping up this, of course, was an endorsement of the fact that Jesus wanted you to use your nukes by a decorated SS, not Waffen-SS, but a real SS major by the name of, and they like to talk to him as a rocket scientist. He was a rocket engine guy, Werner von Braun, who defied, thanks to his fellow travelers in the U.S. State Department, came over here with many other Nazis at the end of the war to help our missile program, our rocket program. And he has a smiling face saying that his fellow Nazis wanted to bring this fantastic rocket technology to America only because we were a Bible-based society. So, of course, you've got Jesus saying the value of launching your nukes, and a great SS German major telling you we came to you because of your religious views. I think it was 36 hours after we broke it, the Air Force pulled the training, saying that they were asked by the press how long had they been doing it. I think they owned up to a few years. It was 25 years, which is a few years if you're Methuselah. I want to give other people a chance to ask questions. That's a good one. We've had thousands of success stories. Perhaps our biggest one happened on August 7th of this year, 3 days before the then Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Norty Schwartz, left office. The Air Force promulgated for the first time in American history Air Force Instruction 1-1, making it clear that violating proselytizing, would be a violation of the military criminal code, known as the Uniform Code of Military Justice, specifically Article 92, dereliction of duty. The problem is that it requires knowledge on the part of the person there. That means the military needed to get out the knowledge of Air Force 1-1. Now, I've been known to put up billboards sometimes to get the word out to people. So we went, of course, to NBC. We have a lot of reporters who like us, and we wanted to carry the gospel of Air Force Instruction 1-1, Section 2.11, because we worked really hard for that. Now, to this day, nobody's been prosecuted under it. Remember, there were a lot of laws in the South, starting with the Emancipation Proclamation, that gave people of color their chance to vote. We also had Jim Crow. It was 100 years later when LBJ pushed forth the civil rights legislation that we finally had a little bit of help in the South. Oftentimes, if you create a law and it is observed more in its breach than in its compliance, it's worse than if the law was never passed at all. So we want somebody to have their neck strung out as quickly as we can. We only have thousands of actors, bad actors out there. Next question, my new friends. Yes, sir.
Is the problem here primarily related to the proximity to the religious right as compared to, say, Annapolis, West Point, Kings Point, the other academies?
Did you hear the question?
No.
They wanted to know whether or not the proximity, the Air Force Academy to the Protestant Vatican, which is what I call Colorado Springs, all the 100 evangelical fundamentalist organizations that are centered here, some of whom have their people here tonight who apparently don't have vocal cords or laryngitis or something. Text me, I'll answer your text. Is there a nexus between that? Originally we thought so. I don't think so really much anymore. We have over 100 clients at West Point. We have a lot of clients at Annapolis. Part of the problem is that you have almost, I think it's over 30 parachurch organizations running pell-mell through the military. Let's talk about one, because I'm sure they have some of their folks here tonight. The Officers Christian Fellowship. That's just one of them. There are at least, to our knowledge, about 15,000 officers in the OCF in our U.S. military. Now remember, Hitler had 7.9% in his National Socialist movement. Stalin had 2.8%. We believe that we have about 34% of the officers in the U.S. military are evangelical, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. At least half are diminutive, so it's 17%. The Officers Christian Fellowship, we started hammering on them about 4 years ago because their express goal was, I didn't make it up, it's on their website. We want Christian officers exercising biblical leadership to raise up a godly military. Let's replace that for a second. We want Islamic officers exercising Quranic leadership to raise up an army, a Mahdi army of Allah. there would be blood in the streets. There would be blood all over the Broad. The three purposes of the Officers Christian Fellowship. We want to see a spiritually transformed United States military. Number two, with ambassadors for Christ in uniform. Parenthetically, that hasn't worked out too well for planet Earth the last 2,000 years. Thirdly, empowered by the Holy Spirit. Oh, but I'm not done, my new friends. Their number one Bible study that they push on their helpless subordinates, and the enlisted version of the Officers Christian Fellowship is the CMF, the Christian Military Fellowship. The Bible study states, we will not allow the opposition, all of which is spearheaded by Satan, to prevent or thwart us from regaining territory for Jesus Christ in the U.S. military. A guy who's going to be a 4-star general soon in the Army, Bob Caslin, whom we caught on videotape in the Christian Embassy scandal, another success we had, is on videotape saying that he's the aroma of Jesus Christ in the military. He was not too long ago the commandant of cadets at West Point. He was also the head of the Officers Christian Fellowship there. Now, they slightly changed and modified their purpose and their goals because they couldn't take the heat of the press. We know they only did that peripherally. And if you go tonight to the Officers Christian Fellowship website and put down U.S. Naval Academy, you will still see it there. They didn't take theirs down. We have a lot of law firms that work for us, including the second largest in the world. I'm a bit of a tenacious trial lawyer myself. We hit Annapolis 6 weeks ago with a FOIA request on that exact same thing. So you might know what's coming down the track with them. That's just the OCF. Cadence International. If you go to our website, you'll see a 5-minute video we put together of our hit parade of this stuff, which will make you sick to your stomach. Cadence International's mantra is they want to bring the gospel to cadets, midshipmen, officers, and NCOs when they're at their lowest, during training, Ranger training, Green Beret, SEAL, whatever. They're cold, they're shaking, they're without sleep. They have to get ready for a GR, they have a paper due the next day or in an hour. They want to bring the gospel then because you're more receptive to it. Because you basically want to please God help me. Cadence International, and we'll be breaking this story soon, we just found out 48 hours ago, 7.5% of their budget comes from the Department of Defense. They're being contracted because, we don't have enough chaplains. When I was a cadet, we had 6 of them. 6. There are now, I think, if you count reservists and others that are there, 18. And they still say it's just not enough for them. I never said it before, but I'm going to say it now. Abolish the chaplaincy. If we can contract out to Blackwater, whatever else is there, contract out for people of faith to help. I'm not saying eliminate it. Remember, I told you, respect people of faith. But we don't need to turn people into officers, commissioned officers, wearing the Star of David or the crucifix or the sickle moon or whatever. It's wrong. It's unconstitutional, and mark me. We'll take that fight up in the year 2021. We're a little full right now. Next question, my brothers and sisters. Red hat. You look a little bit like Ashton Kutcher. Awesome. I just humped you. Go ahead.
When you hear people make a claim that atheism is a religion, or that secular humanism even is a worship of humanity, or that we are God, or what have you, when it's compared that they're on the same playing level, how do you distinguish? For example, I guess I just heard from the chair that there are 6 Christian groups at this school right now, and this is the first secular one. How do you distinguish a meeting like this, for example, from a meeting like one of the Christian groups? How do you respond to the claim that it's the same thing as a religious organization or a religious movement? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not here to disprove a negative. As I said before, we don't focus on anybody's religious faith. Our U.S. Constitution, what's your name?
Ben?
Yeah.
Ben,
our U.S. Constitution allows everybody to gloriously and comprehensively celebrate whatever religious faith they want to, or no faith. What cannot happen is that one faith, or no faith, engage the machinery of the state, the awesome financial power and have of our federal government to create this alloy, this insuperable advantage. And we've seen this happen before. Whenever a weaponized version of any religious faith, specifically Christianity, what we're facing with, engages the machinery of the state, we do not end up with little creeks, rivers, ponds, lakes, or rivers. We end up with oceans and oceans of blood. So when someone says, well, atheism is a religion or isn't, I don't get it. I don't care. My point is that You can look at the sunset at the Grand Canyon. We can see it. Stevie Wonder can't see that, but he can write a song about it. You know, who are we to sit down and determine whether, you know, what version of what makes you tick or what makes you, turns you on about the essence of your humanity? A friend of mine once said, you can believe anything you want to, but at the end of the day, you don't really know what's true, and I don't really know what's true. Many people we talk to just can't say that. They have a playbook. And if a leaf blows across the driveway, they're going to run and look at, at 2 Corinthians, and it's going to tell them what that means. And that's fine. That's fine if they take it and they don't put it in the workplace. If that person is your shift manager at KFC or Starbucks, that violates Title VII of the U.S. Code. But that person being your military superior, that is much more than your shift manager at Starbucks. In the military, having sexual intercourse with someone other than your spouse, adultery, is a felony. Did you know that? I've tried and defended those cases. If you're ordered to go to the base dentist at 4 p.m. by your military superior, and you don't go, it can be a felony. Why? Because we give up many of our constitutional rights when we put the uniform on. You give them up in order to buttress the concept of good order and discipline, because when we have enough good order and discipline in our military, we create enough lethality capacity to protect the full panoply of constitutional rights for the rest of us. It's very different. It's noble. It's honorable. And so getting down to splitting hairs about, look, I want you to accept my version of Jesus. If you're walking through a mall here in Colorado Springs, or you're going to a Sky Sox game and someone starts proselytizing you, welcome to America. Deal with it. That's what we're all about here. But be prepared for blowback. I love it when religious people are dumb enough to come to my door. I mean, I stop everything. You know, I get them food. I don't know how to cook. Sit down. Let's go here. Let's go. I love this. But not in the workplace. Look, ladies and gentlemen, we're not a complex meal like Chateaubriand. We're a freaking hamburger. You can't use your position of military authority to force your religious view, generally fundamentalist dominion Christianity, on a helpless subordinate. You can't do that. If you do it, we're going to fight you. And we're going to hurt you. The only way you can. The only way we can. We will expose you and we'll drag you into court. Next question. Way up there, sitting up in the nosebleed section.
Do you get any help from any sort of the military for what you're doing and trying to straighten it out? Is there any place in the military that is supporting you?
In this room tonight, there are human beings that are circulating blood, reflecting light, and breathing, that I will not point out, who are American heroes. They are American heroes. Some are in this section, some are here, and some are over there. I had one of my classmates who just retired as a 3-star general. I believe he didn't get his 4th star because he was helping us. We have admirals and generals. We have E1s, E2s, and we have many others that stick their necks out. Many of them have to do it in complete and total silence and fear that if they're caught. Look, I mean, when I spoke at West Point, the cadets that took me there, their SSA had only been recently approved. And their version of SCA, Scheduling Committee Action, I think it's called, to allow cadets to leave, has been disapproved 4 times in a row. Officially, I wasn't supposed to be able to speak at West Point, but some of the cadets and faculty got me in there. We had a nice chat. It went great. The next night, I had an organized speech at the Secular Student Alliance at New Paltz, SUNY, State University of New York. At the last minute, West Point told the cadets, you can't go. But 2 of them did. Listen to this, guys, and women if you're up there, cadets. They had to drop me off at my hotel after I spoke. And I wondered why they had little satchels with them, these cadets. They did because they had their PT gear in there, their physical training gear. And I knew they had a game the next morning, a mandatory formation, football game against Kent State. And I asked them, well, what are you carrying this stuff for? And they said, don't worry about it. And I said, no, I do worry about it. They said, well, we got to get you back to your hotel. And, we didn't get approval from our authority for all the cadets to come. So we have to park in a special place, and then we'll just get back to West Point. And I said, what does that have to do with your little satchel? They said, well, we're going to change into our running gear. I said, well, you'll be getting back at midnight to the, and they said, well, we have to park 7 miles away and then run back to the academy. This is America? Fortunately, one of our supporters drove me back, and the cadets were able to park only a mile and a half away. All of them want to go to the Air Force Academy because they think it's so much more chill than West Point. For what it's worth. I'm telling you that so in answer to your question, We have our largest organizational supporting agency, ready for this, is the California Council of Churches. That's 5,500 individual churches, 21 different Protestant denominations, and 1.5 million California Protestants. We have one Jewish group that supports us. It's the Columbus Jewish Foundation. And that Columbus is now the largest city in Ohio, bigger than Cincinnati and Cleveland. But many other folks don't want to be associated. We are turned down by many synagogues. I speak at places all over the country. Our plaintiffs we've always found that atheists, agnostics, secularists, and humanists seem to be the ones with the greatest degree of bravery, except at the Air Force Academy, where our one client who's out, an evangelical Christian, went with us to court. He'd been a professor there for a lot of years. He's not there anymore. But, and his dog was poisoned. I'm sure it was an accident because, dogs love that taste of rat poison. And it's, I could go on and on. But let's talk about the Air Force Academy just for a second. I hate most of the people that run it. I know they hate me. And I'm here for my reunion for the next 3 days, so talk about being a tarantula on a wedding cake. Dana Bourne, who's the dean up there, or as I refer to her, Dana Bourne again. It's incontrovertible that a short while ago, she called in one of her 20 or 21 department heads, and on his performance evaluation, wrote down on the sheet that basically made it clear that she expected him to initiate a counterinsurgency against me and our foundation. Now, what's an insurgency? It's a war. Like the British viewed us as insurgents when we were fighting for the Revolutionary War. I would say that the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and the others that we're fighting are insurgents. So a counterinsurgency is a war against insurgents. I can tell you the person that she wrote that on, the full colonel that she wrote that on, was stunned, tried to go up through Air Force channels to get this investigated. Nothing happened. Because you see, in the military, you have 5 places to go if you are abused for your religious faith. And that is up your chain of command, which doesn't usually work because they're usually the ones that are torturing you. Secondly, you can go to the chaplains. Not going to work too well since most of them are at the wrong side. You can go to the JAGs. We have a number of JAGs who are clients of ours and chaplains, by the way. And the JAGs and chaplains are not line officers. They're staff officers. It doesn't help much. You can then file an EEO complaint, or you can file an IG complaint. Flash to 2004, 10 days before graduation. My oldest son and my now daughter-in-law are about to graduate. One of their classmates puts together, with the help of a faculty member, another American hero, who may or may not be here tonight, a very lengthy complaint to the EEO office at the academy, and delivers it 10 days before graduation because he wanted to make sure he was going to be safe. He sat down, and the officer, who was Miss America, that officer had been selected that year as the EEO Officer of the Year for the Air Force. He looked at the complaint, briefly read it over, looked at the cadet and said, "I can't help you." The cadet said, "Sir," he said, "it is my job to bring you back to Jesus Christ." The cadet is prepared to take a polygraph exam on that. So since you don't have any place to go, and we have so many members of the IG and EEO that are MRFF clients, many of them high-ranking, nature abhors a vacuum. So they come to me and our foundation, and ergo the militancy and aggression that we get blamed for, the Godzilla, speaking to cadets. If I'm Godzilla, I'm the Godzilla they made me into, and God bless you, God, for doing that. Next question. Yes, ma'am. A little bit louder so they can hear.
Excuse me. I work for a large publicly traded corporation that has a county contract that provides a very important public service. We have no fewer than, I believe, 3 chaplains on staff right now.
In the publicly traded corporation.
Can you speak to similar situations in civilian land?
That's not our main focus, but the bottom line is that we do have something called Title VII. Under Title VII of the U.S. Code, you can't call somebody in and hire them or not based on their religion. We have a problem with this this faith situation that came out with the George Bush administration that Obama promised he was going to get rid of. What was it? The faith-filled...
Faith-based initiative.
Faith-based organizations that you get federal money if you're faith-based, because faith is really good. It's great to have faith. If you're a Dodgers fan or a Cubs fan, you know what faith is. But they're not talking about that kind of faith. If you're an Air Force football fan, your faith is that you're not going to fumble the ball, that you can actually tackle somebody. But after the last couple of games, I don't know if the faith is theirs. But, and again, with Nevada coming in Friday night, it's going to be a real test of faith. Without trying to belittle it, you cannot use religion as a barometer for anything. I'm stunned. If I was a shareholder, I'd be filing a derivative suit before I go to bed tonight. And I do mean that. You know, they have chaplains on staff. That's great. That's where I want my money going. So the bottom line is that I think that totally sucks, and I suggest you listen to South of Heaven by Slayer tonight. Next question. Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, we have this disclaimer. I work up on the Hill.
Okay.
But I do know the difference.
By Hill, do you mean Capitol Hill or the Air Force Academy?
The Cadet Hill.
Okay.
But
Was that Cadet Hell or Cadet?
Okay. I would disclaimer. I know the difference between a Sikh and a Muslim, so hopefully we're good.
Can I say what? Okay,
That being said, the Air Force Chief of Chaplains, I guess not long ago, and certainly speaking of Stephen out of turn, said that the Free Thinkers group has no place in the Air Force Academy Spire program. Are you guys working on that?
We are. We are, as a matter of fact. I don't think it's likely that the Air Force Chief of Chaplains and I are ever going to go out to Din Din together. You know, particularly since I think that his job should be eliminated, and basically he should be, you know, tried under various articles of the UCMJ for, you know, for felonies. To sit there and say that free thinkers have no, you know, to me, the Air Force doesn't need SPIRE. The Air Force needs special programs in religious education. They need SPICE. You got to spice it up. Special programs in constitutional education. That's what they need. Next question. Camera guy.
Recently, there was a climate survey on the Air Force Academy where it said that 14% of cadets had been pressured and proselytized to join a different religion. And in the major findings of the survey on that page, it characterized all that pressure as coming from cadet on cadet. How does that jive with what you know from your own clients?
I would say that from we get from our clients, that's total bullshit. Now, if it's your roommate talking, I had a roommate that was an evangelical Christian. He's not coming to the reunion. We're probably not close friends. If there's no situational imbalance between rank, and that's a little bit of a dicey thing as a cadet. If you're a third class or a dually fourth class, then second class, whatever, it's dicey. But the bottom line is you're not going to stifle religious discussion. That's not our point. I look at these surveys, and I can give you professional statisticians that will talk all day long about what is a real voluntary survey or what really isn't. You talk to our clients or our clients' families. We broke a record this year, 35 new families that have 4 degrees or freshmen, dualies at the academy, that are so worried about the fact. We put out an advisory, a parental advisory, I think it was 2 to 3 years ago, about the academy, which again hurt. Any of you ever see the movie Old Yeller? Yes. You know, the last scene, you're too young, but you ought to see the movie. The last scene is the frontier guy, you know, the frontier family, and he's got a dog, it's probably a yellow lab, and it's, you know, it's like Lassie on steroids, it's great, but in the end he gets rabies. The last scene he has to shoot his own dog. I mean, yeah, I'm about to break up right now, seriously. Well, that's what it feels like taking on the academy. Unless you've been there, you don't understand how much it hurts to do this. It does, but this is not the place that I went to. And I've had parents of, it's on our website, parents of Jewish cadets attack me in the media saying, my kids never faced a problem. I've had other cadets and family members say, I've been there for years, never had a problem. And my response is, where are you from? They might say Pittsburgh, Boise, LA, and I'll say, really? Do they have armed robberies, rapes, and murders in Pittsburgh, Boise, and LA? They'll go, where are you going with this? I go, just answer the question. Yeah, they do. You ever seen one? No. Well, then how could it happen? I want to make sure you understand something. I had one of our heroes once say, Mikey, why don't you try to explain this to your audiences as to how pervasive, out-of-control fundamentalist Christianity is in the military. Why don't you try doing this? I'm going to see if I can find something to explain it to you. Why did that fall? Why did it fall? What's the cosmic force? Gravity. That is exactly how ubiquitous and systemic, out-of-control fundamentalist Christianity is in our military. But you can't see gravity. As we sit here tonight, this is very expensive. I got to take this back. Radio waves and TV waves are coursing through our corporeal forms as we sit here and talk in a manner such as this. But you can't see it, but it's there. Senator Day O'Connor, I love her, is the one who said, we don't count heads in this country before enforcing the First Amendment. The other thing, a great statement by Rosa Luxemburg, a Jewish activist circa 1916 in Germany, those who do not move never notice their chains. And a lot of people don't move at the academy. They are locked in, like I was, as a little electron. Let me just get the hell out in 4 years, get my commission, get out of here, and hopefully they don't hit me back for, hit me back for having to pay anything back again. I didn't go to a lot of, I just, after I was a recruited athlete, but after I got rid of that, it was, let me just get out of here and get married. Which I've been doing in my 36th year now, which is amazing to her and me. By the way, if you want to ask any questions, you can certainly ask Bonnie, our protection dog, and her service dog. I don't think Abby can answer too well, but I can tell you that living this life is not easy. We've had the windows shot out of our house twice. We've had innocent animals had their throats cut and left on the front door of the house. We've had swastikas and crucifixes painted on the house, tires slashed, beer bottles and feces thrown at the house. We probably average 8 to 12 grotesque death threats a week. We got one, Bonnie got one on the voicemail, on her voicemail today driving up, which got her so sick I wasn't sure she was going to come tonight. The voice sounded like a Appalachian inbred maniac Tea Party person. I guess that's all the same thing. I don't know, but it's you got to be willing to take it. Fundamentalist Muslims are willing to die and kill for their faith. Fundamentalist Christians are certainly willing to kill for it. They're not too keen to die for it. So we have all of our security friends. Can we have a hand for our security knights on the way? You have a second question. Go ahead.
You mentioned in passing earlier that you weren't very happy with some of the things Obama's done. What has he done or not done that could have been more friendly to your organization?
The first thing is he could have met with me. We had a U.S. senator that we cozied up to very much during his election. He's related to one of your politicians in this state. The moment he got in, he sent a letter to Obama saying, Mr. President, would you please meet with Mr. Weinstein? I was in the White House. And when Lincoln was there were 13 members of the White House staff. When I was there were 1,300. I didn't expect to meet with Obama, but it's not that hard to meet with somebody in the White House staff. The senator wrote in a letter saying, would you please meet with Mr. Weinstein about an issue extremely important to him? That's Washington speak for keep me out of this. So, my view is that under Republicans, man exploits man, but under Democrats, it's just the opposite. So we've given up on both political parties. The worst thing that Obama did, he promised during his campaign he would eliminate the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives. He didn't do it. It's still there. One of our closest allies, the Reverend Welton Gaddy, the head of the Interfaith Foundation, he's a fabulous man and a devout Southern Baptist clergyman, is on Obama's religion council. We're all very disappointed. But the way I view things politically is if somebody tells me we're going to break your left arm, Mikey, or we're going to sever it, I'll take the broken arm. Next question. Yes, sir.
So when will MRF be finished? How will you know that your work is done?
I don't think we'll ever be done. I used to think it was going to be about 2 weeks after we started back in 2004. That pushed it off 10 more days. When I see what we basically want, well, I know there were 300 Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae, that great movie, 300. We want 300 people to be tried by court-martial, and we want them to go to prison and lose their liberty for what they've done. I want one person severely punished for violating the oath that you all swear, not to the New Testament, the Quran, or the Torah, but to the United States Constitution. Show me one person punished, ever. When that happens, we'll be on our way, and I'll get back to you. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
I served in the Navy for 25 years.
Thank you.
And I can't say that I've seen the problem you're describing, but I appreciate your Pittsburgh comments on that point. So my question is, are you seeing the same level of problem across all the services? Is it worse in the Air Force? Is it worse because there's more, or because they've got more hands on more nukes? And what is at the base of this? Is it an organized initiative to take over our military, or is it just sort of a lot of moving parts with a lot of snowflakes?
The question is, where do we see most of this? Let me tell you, it's very interesting. It took us a few years. The closer you are to drawing the blood of our enemy, the higher the chance you're going to find a Dominionist. The Air Force PJs, the Navy SEALs, the Army Rangers, Delta Force, and the Green Berets. The closer you are, if you're a Apache helicopter pilot or whatever, the closer you are to drawing blood, the higher the probability. If you're a maintenance officer or you're a quartermaster or whatever, less of a chance. The closer you are to drawing blood, the better the chance you're going to see this. Is there some sort of central, like in NASA, central room with people with computers and guys running around with these little mohawks? Sometimes we think it's like that. It's just so enormous, they really can't seem to get out of their way. A number of years, to meeting here tonight, I believe, at UCCS is a group called the Navigators. About 6 years ago, they put out a newsletter one day saying that we're fighting this growing evil called Mikey Weinstein and his foundation. Don't let anyone make sure he never sees this newsletter so he finds out about our secret room in Fairchild Hall, which is a big academic building, where we have 24/7 access, to proselytizing, our cadets. Well, of course someone gave it to me right away. Yes, the room existed. They were signing up 4 degrees, that means freshmen, to sign contracts that before they would graduate, they would bring 100 people to Christ. This started on the first day of basic cadet training. It is still going on. It is still going on. Now, do I mind people praying for Jesus to harm us? There's a religion out there called the Chaplaincy of Full Gospel Churches. It's headquartered in Dallas, Texas. About 4 years ago, they started issuing what that guy did, or that person, my classmate, whoever these people are, 8 days ago, imprecatory prayers, like as if fatwas in Islam, death prayers against me and my family. I guess that we become real troublesome to them. So they started going into the media and asking Jesus to slaughter Bonnie and myself and our children, to plunder our fields, seize our assets, and wipe our descendants off the face of the earth for 10 generations. They must have failed biology because you only have to take 1 generation of life. These are not the smartest people in the world. I've never found a fundamentalist Christian that ever had a sense of humor. I'm serious. I mean, what they laugh at is something I would never understand. But, just wipe us off for 1 generation. We're not going to spontaneously generate. We didn't think that was protected First Amendment speech, so we sued them. Of course, we sued them not in Massachusetts or in Northern California, but in Dallas, Texas. We were in court for 3.5 years. One of the people we sued was Gordon Klingenschmidt, an Air Force Academy graduate. The nice thing about the Chaplaincy of Full Gospel Churches is they're completely licensed and bonded by our Department of Defense to be what's called an ecclesiastical endorser as a chaplain. You can't be a chaplain unless a religion gives you a certificate suitable for framing saying that you're a chaplain. The Chaplaincy of Full Gospel Churches has just under 300 currently active chaplains and chaplain candidates. A fine religion. Its head, Jim Ammerman, who died last year, I'm very happy about that, by the way, favored and went out in the media indicating that he favored the assassination of Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Senator Chris Dodd, and Joe Biden. But they're a fine religion. And there, again, almost 300 of them out there. And Klingenschmidt lives, he may be here tonight for all I know. He lives here in Colorado Springs, which is why we have plenty of security here. It is insane. It is out of control. And I tell people all the time, you actually have to do something about this now. You don't have to go public. You can help us, but if you see somebody being hurt, or you see it going on, you walk away and you don't deserve anything. You can't ever allow someone to be hurt like this anymore. And you don't think it matters if somebody comes by and says, hey, it's the Christmas party. I was going to tell one of our heroes in here tonight, but I didn't get the chance on the phone today as we were driving up Interstate 25, shortly after my wife got the filthy call. We have cadets and staff at the Academy calling us now, because we're getting close to that season. And we're starting to designate cadets and staff to be who's going to be doing the holiday or Christmas party. Well, will it be holiday or Christmas or holiday party? They want to wait now to see who the president's going to be after November 6th, whether they defy us again. They want to see who it's going to be. I don't know which candidate might they match with what philosophy, but depending on who wins, it'll either be a Christmas party, because there's that war on Christmas. We're really attacking these poor Christians, most of whom exist in this country the way they are. Most of whom are our clients. It reminds me of the axe-murdering son, shortly after he's been convicted of dispatching his parents, and we get into sentencing, he throws himself upon the mercy of the court, saying, Your Honor, please show mercy. After all, I'm an orphan. Or the playground bully that beats the little kid into the dirt, and then complains that the teacher monitor is running over, gyrating with spittle coming out of her mouth, saying that kid's head really hurt my fist. Oh, my heart bleeds for you, fundamentalist Christians. Next question. You, sir.
What do we do to change it? I mean, in a country where, a presidential candidate can't be elected without saying, God bless America, at the highest levels of our military, how do we change it?
I'm not exactly sure, but one of my favorite quotes is from, again, one of my favorite Americans, Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist. You hopefully have heard of him. His great statement was that power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. I know what we do. We're the demanders of the commanders. Demand. Demand. Don't be worried about your 401k. Don't be worried about your promotion. I understand you have children and you have spouses. I have children and spouses.
Enough questions.
I know we got pizza. I will take 2 more questions because I see someone telling me that. Yes, ma'am?
I'm actually from Dallas, Texas, and I've never heard of the...
Chapel Full Gospel Churches?
Yes, the worst I've heard of is Westboro Baptist Church. But with me being so young, how do you suppose that, we educate the youth about what you... I've had one of our litigators described civilization as a constant race between education and catastrophe. The question was, how do we educate? I boxed at the Air Force Academy, and I learned that hitting somebody hard in the face really educates them. I'm not a professional educator. I know we have them in the room here, and it's not easy to do. It's not easy. And I know that homeschooling, when you only take somebody to one cafeteria and they only get the one kind of food, where it sucks at Mitchell Hall forever for 4 years, you may clap. You're not exposed to Indian food or Native American Indian food or French food or Italian food. I guess the best thing to do is to talk about this and talk about it with respect to others. If somebody comes up to you and asks whether you're saved or whatever, it's a great opportunity to open up and explore. But you've got to be firm in your convictions, and you can't be afraid. You can't be afraid. And since you've asked how do we help people, remember what the great American poet Audrey Nash said. Don't ever, ever befriend the oppressed unless, ladies and gentlemen, you're prepared to take on the oppressor. Final question before we eat. Yes, ma'am.
When you receive disgusting emails like the one that the young lady read before you came out, I presume that they're always anonymous. But if they aren't, is there anything that you can or do to retaliate or legally to take action with the law?
Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to become a professional baseball player. And I could have. I just decided I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy instead. I thought it would be cool to be a public figure. Unfortunately, I became one a few years ago, and it was cool for almost 2 nanoseconds. The problem is when you become a public figure, when somebody denigrates you, you have to show what's called reckless disregard of the truth. Most of you are probably not public figures out there, and it's much easier for you to sue somebody for defamation. I have a list of 500 people that I want to beat the shit out of, and another 500,000 that I want to sue. But it's not that easy. When you're a public figure, you have to take a lot of this stuff. I don't mind them coming after me, but when they come after Bonnie or the kids or my parents or anything else like that, that crosses the line. Most of the emails, most of these people are cowards. When I can play for you an email, a phone call that right now that we get, and then we'll stop to eat. Can you imagine having a little 2-year-old call you on the phone, and you can't tell the sex because at that age their little voices, their voices, the sex their gender is indeterminate, and they just say, "Now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep. Mikey Weinstein, bullet in the head, praise the Lord, he's finally dead." He hates our Lord, and we can tell, which is why he'll burn in hell. That's bad, but when you hear the children, the adults in the background prompting the children, I've got on my voicemail, I have a Hall of Fame that would shock you for the things that people say. So if we could find out who they are, we would go after them. But most of them don't have the courage, and they're very, very powerful when they're tough and very brave behind a computer. I did a 3-hour interview with Dan Rather a couple of years ago, and I was a little concerned. I'm not usually concerned about interviews, but I know they always hit you with a zinger at the end. And he had left CBS. He went to Mark Cuban's network, the guy that owns the Dallas Mavericks. And we did the interview in New York. We walked around Manhattan.
And I thought I got off completely free of any of these really questions. These questions I thought would be very penetrating and terrifying. And then I saw him smile at the end, and he just sat there and said, you know, Mikey, you and your family and your foundation are often criticized because they say you're unpatriotic because you're attacking our Department of Defense at a time that we're involved in 2 overt and 1 covert war. Obviously, at that time, Iraq was still going on. How do you respond? Now, normally you come up with these great pithy statements an hour or a year later, but this time I was ready. And I looked at the camera and I said, you know, Dan, I don't have to respond. The great late historian, Howard Zinn, did it for me when he said that, dissent is the highest form of patriotism. Think about that. Thank you for tonight. Please eat on us and enjoy.